The air was heavy with dust and silence on the ruined planet Arden, once a lively colony full of hope. Arden was now a place where shadows moved between broken buildings. The ground was cracked and blackened by fire. The sky was a dull gray, hiding the sun behind thick clouds. Only a few survivors remained after the terrible attack. Mira stood near the edge of the broken settlement. Her eyes scanned the horizon carefully. She was young but strong and smart. She held a small device in her hand that glowed faintly. It was the last hope of the people left here. A distress signal sent to Earth. Behind her, Jor moved quietly through the rubble. He was a tall man with a calm but serious face. Once a soldier, he had fought in many battles before coming to Arden. Now he guarded the survivors with a fierce determination. He stopped beside Mira and looked at the signal. "Device, how long before Earth answers?" Mira asked, her voice full of hope and fear. Jor shook his head slowly. "It is hard to say. Earth is very far from here. The signal takes a long time to reach, even if they hear us. They may not come quickly." Mira pressed a button on the device. The signal blinked like a small star in the dark. It carried a simple message. The colony was under attack by an unknown enemy. They needed help fast. The enemy was called the Deathworlders. No one on Arden had seen their full faces, but they had heard the terrifying sounds. Strange cries and deep roars in the night. The Deathworlders moved fast and attacked without warning. Their weapons were strange and deadly. Entire buildings were destroyed in minutes. The survivors had tried to fight back, but it was like fighting the wind. The Deathworlders seemed to know the forest and hills better than anyone. They could vanish and appear again, never giving the humans a chance to catch them. Mira looked back toward the small group of survivors gathered near what was left of the colony. Center, children clung to tired parents. Old men and women held hands, praying quietly. The fear in their eyes was strong, but so was the hope that Earth would come. "Do you really think Earth will send help?" asked Leon, a quiet man with a scar on his cheek, as he joined Mira and Jor. Mira smiled softly. "They must. We sent the signal. Earth is strong and has the power to protect us. They will not leave us here to die." Jor frowned. "We cannot only wait. We must prepare to fight if help does not come." Leon nodded slowly. "But what can we do? Our weapons are old. Our numbers are few. We survive because we adapt," Jor said firmly. "We know Arden better than anyone. We will use the land to our advantage." As the sun set, the survivors built makeshift defenses. They gathered stones and metal scraps to create barriers. They worked quietly, moving like shadows so they would not be noticed by the Deathworlders. The forest around them seemed alive with strange noises. Mira went back to the small lab she had set up in what was left of the science building. She studied the signal device again. Her fingers moved fast over the controls, trying to make the signal stronger. She wished she could reach Earth faster. She thought about the stories she had heard about Earth, a planet full of life and technology, far away but full of people who cared. She imagined great ships crossing the stars to come to Arden's rescue. It gave her strength to keep trying. Suddenly, the device beeped. The signal was returning a small response. Mira's heart jumped. She called Jor quickly. "Jor, come here." The signal. "There's a reply." Jor rushed to the lab, his eyes wide. Together, they watched the screen as a message slowly appeared. "This is the Council of Earth," the message said. "We have received your distress call. We understand your danger, but Earth is facing many crises at this time. We advise all colonies to prepare to defend themselves. Immediate help cannot be sent." Mira's hands trembled. Jor's face grew dark. "Prepare to defend themselves," Mira whispered. "No help." Leon joined them, reading the message over their shoulders. "Earth is busy. What kind of answer is this? We are dying here." Jor clenched his fists. "We are not alone. We are on our own." For a moment, silence filled the room. The hope that had kept them alive was slipping away. But Mira looked at the faces of the survivors outside, waiting and trusting. She took a deep breath. "We cannot give up," she said. "If Earth cannot help now, we must help ourselves. We will fight. We will survive." Jor nodded. "Tomorrow, we scout the forest. We find out what the Deathworlders want. We learn their weakness. That night, the survivors gathered around small fires. The cold wind blew through the broken windows and doors. Mira sat next to an old man named Taro, who told stories of the first settlers. Arden was once a world of promise, Taro said. Quietly, we came here to build a new home. But the Deathworlders came like shadows in the night. They destroy everything. Mira looked into the fire. We will rebuild, she said softly. We will show them that humans do not give up. The forest whispered around them. Somewhere in the dark, the Deathworlders waited. But the survivors had a new fire inside them, a will to fight, to protect their home. Mira closed her eyes and thought of Earth again. She hoped one day help would come. But for now, Arden's last signal was not just a call for rescue. It was a call to stand strong and face the coming storm. The sun rose slowly over the broken world of Arden, casting weak light on the battered colony. The survivors moved quietly, aware that danger was never far away. Mira and Jor were among the first to leave the safety of the ruins. They carried simple weapons in the determination to learn more about the enemy that haunted their home. The forest surrounding the colony was dense and strange. Trees twisted toward the sky, their thick leaves blocking the light. Strange sounds echoed between the branches, soft rustles, sudden snaps, and sometimes low growls. The forest was alive and seemed to watch them as they moved carefully through the undergrowth. Jor held a small scanner in his hand. It sent out pulses and received weak signals. He scanned the area for signs of the Deathworlders. Mira walked beside him, her eyes alert for anything unusual. The forest felt both beautiful and dangerous. We must find their tracks, Jor said. We need to know where they come from and where they go. Mira nodded. If we can understand them, maybe we can stop them. They moved deeper into the forest, following faint marks on the ground. Broken branches, crushed leaves, and strange footprints led them to a clearing. The signs were fresh, no older than a day. Suddenly, a low growl came from the bushes nearby. Mira froze. Jor raised his weapon slowly, ready to protect them. From the shadows stepped a wild creature of Arden, a large beast covered in dark fur, with glowing eyes. It watched them carefully, but did not attack. Mira remembered what Taro had said the night before. Arden was home to many creatures adapted to its harsh world. Some could be dangerous, but this one seemed curious rather than hostile. Jor lowered his weapon. This is good, he said. If the wild creatures stay away from the Deathworlders, maybe we can use them. Mira smiled slightly. Maybe they know something we do not. They followed the clearing's edge, finding more evidence of the Deathworlders' presence. Broken weapons, scorched earth, and strange metal scraps littered the ground. The signs told a story of destruction and violence. Mira picked up a small piece of metal. It was unlike anything made by humans, smooth, dark, and heavy, with strange markings. She showed it to Jor. They have advanced technology, she said, more advanced than ours. Jor frowned. That makes them even more dangerous. But every enemy has a weakness. They camped near a small stream that night, round the fire. Mira and Jor shared what they had found with the other survivors. Leon listened closely, his face serious. We cannot wait for Earth's help, Leon said. If they come back, we must be ready. Mira agreed. We must learn everything about the Deathworlders, their weapons, their patterns, their weaknesses. The survivors began to plan. They split into groups to gather supplies, repair weapons, and set traps. Everyone had a role. Even the children helped by collecting herbs and watching the skies. Days passed with little change. The signal to Earth remained unanswered. The hope of rescue was fading. But the survivors' will to live grew stronger. One morning, Mira and Jor found new tracks near the colony. They were deeper and larger than before. The Deathworlders had returned. The survivors prepared for battle. They hid in the ruins, ready to strike. The air was thick with tension. The Deathworlders attacked at dawn. Their shapes moved quickly between trees. Their weapons fired strange energy beams that shattered stone and metal. The survivors fought bravely, using their traps and knowledge of the land. Mira led a group to flank the enemy. She used a flare to distract them, then attacked from behind. The wild creatures of Arden joined the fight. Driven by the sound and motion, the Deathworlders were surprised. But their numbers were many. The survivors were pushed back, retreating to their stronghold. Many were injured, and the losses were heavy. After the battle, Mira tended to the wounded. She looked at the damage around her. The Deathworlders were not just hunters, they wanted to destroy everything. Jor stood beside her, watching the forest. They will come again, he said quietly. We must be ready. Mira nodded. We have to be smarter, faster, stronger. That night, Mira studied the metal scraps from the battle. She found a small device that still worked. It showed images strange. Creatures moving through dark corridors, weapons firing, and worlds burning. The Deathworlders were not just invaders. They were destroyers of planets. Their goal was to consume and conquer. Mira shared this with the survivors. The truth was frightening, but it also gave them new purpose. We are not just fighting for Arden, Mira said. We are fighting for all worlds that might come after us. The survivors listened. Inspired by her words, they began to prepare for a long fight. They repaired weapons, trained every day, and studied the forest and its creatures. Mira and Jor planned to explore further into the forest. They needed to find the source of the Deathworlders' strength. The forest was darker and more dangerous than before, but Mira felt a strange connection to this world. Arden was harsh, but it was their home. As they moved deeper, they found signs of strange technology buried under the trees. Old machines from the first settlers, long forgotten. Mira's hope grew. Maybe they could find something powerful enough to stop the Deathworlders. But danger was always near. In the shadows, the Deathworlders watched and waited. The battle for Arden was only beginning. The survivors knew their lives would change forever. They had no choice but to stand and fight. The sky above Arden remained a dull gray as Mira and Jor returned from their latest scouting mission. The forest had given up some secrets, but the danger grew with every step they took. The survivors waited anxiously in the settlement, hoping for news from Earth. The distress signal had been sent weeks ago, but so far, only silence had answered them. Mira felt a deep weight in her chest. She had hoped Earth would send ships, soldiers, or at least words of comfort. Instead, there was nothing. The silence was louder than any sound in the ruins. That afternoon, Leon gathered the survivors around the central fire pit. He held a small communication device in his hands. It was old and scratched, but still worked well enough to receive messages from Earth. A crackling voice came through the static. This is the Council of Earth. It said, "We have received your distress signal. Our planet faces many challenges, including natural disasters and political unrest. Immediate help cannot be sent to Arden. We advise all colonies to strengthen their defenses and prepare to survive independently." The message ended abruptly. No promise of aid, no words of hope. Just a cold warning. A heavy silence fell over the group. Some faces showed anger, others fear. Mira saw tears in the eyes of children who did not understand what had changed. Jor stood up, his voice firm. "We cannot wait for help that may never come. Arden is our home now. We must protect it ourselves." Mira nodded. She felt a mix of sadness and determination. Earth was not the savior they had dreamed of. The burden was now on the survivors. That night, Mira walked outside under the dim sky. The wind whispered through the broken trees. She thought about Earth, the blue planet full of life and hope. But Earth was far away and unable to come. She met Jor near the edge of the settlement. His eyes were tired but strong. "We have to change our plan," Jor said. "No more waiting. We must take control." Mira agreed. "We need to learn more about the Deathworlders, find their weaknesses, use Arden to fight." The next morning, the survivors organized themselves. Teams were sent into the forest to study the strange creatures and look for old weapons left by the first settlers. Mira joined a group with Kalen, a scientist who had been working on understanding the alien technology they had found. Kalen held a small device that showed images from the forest. "The Deathworlders move fast," he said. "They know Arden well. but they leave traces. If we watch carefully, we can find patterns. The group moved quietly through the trees. They found broken branches bent in unnatural ways and strange tracks that did not match any creature on Arden. Suddenly, a distant roar echoed through the forest. The group froze. Mira's heart pounded. "We must be ready," she whispered. "They are close." They returned to the settlement with more information, but no easy answers. The Deathworlders were dangerous and unpredictable. Meanwhile, the survivors worked to strengthen their defenses. They dug trenches and set traps. Every person had a role, from carrying supplies to standing watch. The youngest children learned to recognize the sounds of the forest and where to hide if danger came. One evening, Mira sat with Taro near the fire. The old man told stories of Earth in the early days on Arden. "We believed Earth would protect us," Taro said softly. "But sometimes, even the strongest cannot help." Mira looked at him. "Then we must be strong ourselves. Arden is our home. We will defend it." The next day, a new message arrived from Earth. This time, it was different. "This is the Council of Earth," the voice said. "Arden is a dangerous world. The Deathworlders are a threat to all colonies. We cannot send help, but we encourage you to unite with nearby colonies and share resources. Survival depends on cooperation and courage." The message was a call to arms, no rescue, but a reminder that they were not alone in the galaxy. Other colonies faced similar threats. Mira and Jor spoke with Leon and Kalen. They decided to send a new message, stronger and clearer, to nearby colonies. They hoped to build an alliance. Mira worked late into the night to improve the signal device. She used parts from broken machines and old radios. The device blinked steadily, sending their plea for help and cooperation. Outside, the forest grew darker. The Deathworlders were watching, waiting for their next move. The survivors knew the fight for Arden was only beginning. But now, they were no longer waiting for a savior. They would become the heroes of their own story. Mira looked at the stars and whispered, "Earth may be far, but we will stand." The morning sun filtered through the thick leaves of Arden's forest. As Mira, Jor, and Kalen prepared for their journey, they were determined to find something powerful enough to help the survivors defend their home. Rumors had spoken of a hidden weapon left behind by the first colonists, an ancient device buried somewhere deep in the forest. If they could find it, it might turn the tide against the Deathworlders. The three of them moved quietly, their steps soft on the moss-covered ground. The forest around them was alive with sounds, the chirping of strange birds, the rustling of leaves, and the distant calls of unknown creatures. Mira felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. Arden was harsh and dangerous, but it was home. Kalen adjusted his pack and looked at a worn map drawn long ago. "The first settlers built hidden bases here," he said. "We might find their technology if we follow the old trails." Jor nodded. "We must be careful. The Deathworlders patrol the forest. We cannot let them catch us." As they walked deeper into the trees, Mira noticed something moving just beyond the shadows. A wild creature stepped into the light. It was large and covered in thick fur, with bright eyes that seemed almost human. The creature watched them silently, neither attacking nor running away. Joe raised his hand slowly, signaling to stop. "It does not seem hostile," he said. Mira stepped forward cautiously. "Maybe it is curious, or maybe it knows something." The creature moved closer, its eyes calm. Mira reached out her hand. After a moment, the creature sniffed her fingers and then turned to lead the way. The three followed, surprised by the unexpected guide. The forest seemed to change as they followed the creature. The trees grew taller, and strange flowers bloomed in the shade. Soon, they found the remains of an old structure hidden beneath thick vines and moss. "This must be one of the first colony's outposts," Kalen said, examining the rusted metal walls. "If the weapon is here, it should be inside." The team entered carefully inside. The air was cool and still. Dust covered the floors, and old machines hummed faintly in the dark. They moved toward a room marked with strange symbols. In the center stood a large device covered with cloth. Mira pulled the cloth away, revealing a strange machine with glowing panels and buttons. It looked like a weapon, but unlike anything they had seen, Kalen touched the panels gently. "This is energy technology," he said. "It might be able to protect Arden from the Deathworlders." Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the building. "The Deathworlders have found them! Run!" Jor shouted. The three grabbed the device and sprinted out into the forest. The wild creature that had guided them reappeared. This time, it growled and stood between the survivors and the advancing enemy. Other creatures joined, forming a protective circle. The Deathworlders moved forward, but the wild creatures fought fiercely. The survivors used the confusion to escape deeper into the forest. After running for what felt like hours, they stopped to catch their breath. Mira looked at the strange device in her hands. "We have to learn how to use this," she said. "It could save us all." Jor nodded. "But first, we need to understand the wild creatures. They are our allies now." Over the next days, Mira and Kalen studied the device while Jor and others watched the forest. The wild creatures often appeared, sometimes curious, sometimes protective. Slowly, the survivors realized that these animals were not just part of Arden's danger, they were its defense. The forest itself was alive and fighting back against the Deathworlders. The wild creatures had survived centuries in this harsh world. They knew how to hide, hunt, and protect. Mira began to communicate with the creatures in simple ways. She left food, moved slowly, and learned their patterns. The creatures accepted her and even seemed to understand her. One evening, Kalen discovered something important. The device could send out a powerful energy shield, but only for a short time. If they used it wisely, they could protect the settlement during an attack. The survivors prepared to bring the weapon back, but the forest was not safe. The Deathworlders were watching and waiting. On their way home, the group faced a new challenge. The Deathworlders had set traps, and the survivors had to use all their skill to avoid them. The wild creatures helped by warning of danger, guiding the humans through hidden paths. When they finally returned, the survivors welcomed them with hope. The ancient weapon was their first real chance to fight back. Mira stood before the group. "We are not alone on Arden," she said. "The forest is with us. The wild creatures protect us. And now, we have the power to defend our home." Jor raised his weapon. "Tomorrow, we prepare for the next attack. This time, we will not only survive, we will fight." The survivors worked together to set up the energy shield around their settlement. The wild creatures stayed close, watching the forest edge as the sun set. The air grew quiet but full of tension. The Deathworlders were coming again. But this time, the survivors had a secret weapon and allies they never expected. Mira looked at the glowing device and then at the creatures by her side. For the first time, she believed they could win. The dawn broke over Arden with a soft orange light. The survivors were ready. The new weapon hummed softly in the center of their settlement. Surrounded by guards and wild creatures, Mira stood beside Jor, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. For weeks, they had prepared. They had learned how to use the energy shield, how to work with the wild creatures, and how to watch the forest for signs of the Deathworlders. Now, the moment of truth had arrived. "Stay alert," Jor said quietly. "They will come soon." The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. The usual sounds of birds and small animals were quiet. The wind was still. Then, far away, a dark shape moved between the trees. The Deathworlders were coming. They moved quickly, their strange weapons glowing as they advanced, but this time, the survivors were ready. Mira activated the energy shield. A bright dome of light covered the settlement, strong and shimmering. The Deathworlders stopped, surprised by the sudden barrier. "Hold the line," Jor shouted. The survivors took their positions, weapons raised. The wild creatures growled and charged, driving the enemy back into the forest. The Deathworlders fired their weapons, but the shield absorbed the energy, protecting the people inside. Mira watched as the fight unfolded. For the first time, she saw the Deathworlders hesitate. Their confidence was shaken. Suddenly, the shield flickered. The energy was low. "Keep it up," Kalen shouted. He worked quickly at the control panel, trying to keep the shield strong. The Deathworlders pressed harder, throwing themselves at the barrier. Some tried to find weak points, others fired from different angles, but the survivors held. The wild creatures fought fiercely, using their strength and speed to confuse the enemy. Then, a loud explosion shook the ground. One of the Deathworlders' machines had been destroyed by a trap hidden in the forest. The survivors cheered. It was a small victory, but it gave them hope. Mira looked at Jor. "We can do this," she said. "We can protect Arden." The battle lasted for hours. The shield protected the settlement, but it was clear the survivors could not keep it up forever. As the sun began to set, the Deathworlders retreated. They disappeared into the forest, leaving broken weapons and machines behind. The survivors watched in silence. They had won the first battle. Mira felt a wave of relief and pride. The colony was safe for now. That night, the survivors gathered around the fire. They shared stories and cared for the wounded. The energy shield had saved many lives. Leon stood and spoke to the group. "Today, we fought not just for ourselves, but for Arden. This is our home. We will defend it together." The survivors nodded, their faces full of new courage. But Mira knew the war was far from over. The Deathworlders would return. They would come stronger and more prepared. "We must keep learning," Mira told Jor. "The shield is good, but it cannot last forever." Jor agreed. "We need to find more weapons, more allies." The next day, Mira and Kalen set out again into the forest. They wanted to study the enemy's fallen machines and understand their technology better. The forest was quiet, but danger was never far. They moved carefully, scanning the ground for signs of traps or enemies. As they examined a destroyed Deathworlder vehicle, Kalen found something unexpected, a small data chip. "This could have important information," he said, "maybe about their plans or weaknesses." Back at the settlement, Kalen worked to unlock the chip. The survivors gathered around as images appeared on the screen maps of the forest. Locations of Deathworlder bases and messages about their next attack. Mira studied the maps carefully. The Deathworlders planned to return in greater numbers, bringing new weapons and machines. "We must prepare," she said. "We cannot wait for them to destroy us." The survivors began building new defenses and training harder. They set traps in the forest and learned to move quickly and quietly. The wild creatures stayed close, becoming part of their team. They helped watch the forest and warned of danger. Mira felt a deep connection to these animals. Arden was not just a harsh world, it was alive and fighting with them. One night, as Mira looked at the stars, she thought about Earth again, the place that had sent them to this world but now could not save them. She whispered, "We will make our own destiny here. Arden will not fall." The survivors' hope burned brighter than ever. They had faced darkness and found light. The next attack was coming. But this time, the survivors would be ready. They would fight for Arden, for their future, and for each other. The morning light on Arden was weak, filtered through thick clouds that promised rain. The survivors moved with purpose. The new information from the data chip had changed everything. The Deathworlders were not just coming back, they were preparing a massive attack. Mira stood with Jor and Leon as they looked over the rough maps Kalen had drawn. The enemy's forces were gathering in the forest's dark corners, ready to strike. With more machines and soldiers than before, "We have to warn everyone," Leon said. "No one can be caught unprepared." The survivors spread out quickly. Messages went to every part of the colony. The children were sent to safe places. The hunters and warriors checked their weapons and traps. Mira felt a heavy weight on her shoulders. The fight was growing harder, but giving up was not an option. That afternoon, the sky darkened, and rain began to fall in heavy sheets. The forest smelled of wet earth and danger. The survivors moved through mud and puddles, setting traps and strengthening defenses. Jor led a small team to the forest's edge. His eyes scanned the shadows, looking for any sign of the enemy. The Deathworlders were clever. They used the weather and the land to hide. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared between the trees. Jor signaled to Mira and the others. The Deathworlders were coming. The battle began quickly. The enemy moved through the forest like ghosts, their weapons, firing bright beams of energy that cut through the rain and darkness. But the survivors were ready. The energy shield hummed to life, covering the settlement with a glowing dome. The wild creatures growled and attacked, driving the Deathworlders. Mira fought alongside the others, her weapon steady. The cold rain soaked her clothes, but she did not feel the chill. Her mind was focused on survival. The Deathworlders used new machines, larger and stronger than before. They crushed trees and earth as they advanced. Jor shouted orders, guiding the survivors to the best positions. The traps caught many of the enemy, but not all. The battle was long and fierce. The rain washed away blood and sweat, but the fight continued without pause. At one point, Mira saw a group of Deathworlders trying to break through the shield. The energy flickered dangerously. She ran to Kalen, who was working frantically to keep the device running. "We need more power," she shouted. Kalen nodded. "There's a backup generator in the old outpost. If someone can reach it, we can strengthen the shield." Mira did not hesitate. She grabbed her gear and ran into the forest. The rain was cold and the ground slippery, but she moved quickly, guided by determination. The forest was alive with sounds of battle behind her and the wild creatures moving silently. Beside her, Mira reached the outpost and found the generator, half buried in mud and vines. She worked fast to repair it, using skills learned from the old colonists. The Deathworlders heard her and followed, closing in with weapons ready. Mira stood her ground, firing at the enemy as she worked. The generator sparked to life, and she rushed back to the settlement. The energy shield grew stronger, pushing the Deathworlders back. The survivors cheered, their hope renewed. As night fell, the enemy retreated into the forest. The battle was over, but the cost was high. Many were wounded, and some had not returned. Mira sat by the fire, exhausted but proud. The colony had survived the rising storm. Jor joined her and handed her a cup of warm water. "We fought well today," he said. Mira looked at the faces around the fire, brave, tired, but unbroken. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. "The Deathworlders will come again." Leon nodded. "But we will be ready. Arden belongs to us." The survivors rested that night, knowing the fight for their home was far from over. But their spirit burned brighter than ever. Mira looked up at the cloudy sky. The storm had passed, but the war was just beginning. The first light of dawn broke over Arden, casting soft gold across the battered settlement. The air was fresh after the night rain, but the survivors felt the weight of what had passed and what was still to come. Mira stood on a small hill overlooking the camp. Around her, people moved quietly, tending to the wounded, repairing defenses, and preparing for whatever the future held. The battles had changed them all. They were no longer just survivors waiting for help. They were warriors, defenders of their home. Jor approached, his face calm but tired. "The Deathworlders have retreated for now," he said. "But they will return, and when they do, we must be stronger." Mira nodded. "We have the weapon, the shield, and the wild creatures as allies. But we need more. We need a future." The survivors gathered that morning for a council. Leon spoke with calm authority. "We have learned much," he said. "The Deathworlders are powerful, but we are smarter and stronger together. Our home is Arden, and we will defend it." Kalen showed new plans he had drawn. "We can improve the shield and build more traps. We can even create weapons from the parts of the enemy's machines." The crowd murmured with hope. Mira stood and spoke to the group. "Earth may not have sent help, but we have found our own strength. We have made friends with this world and its creatures. We have faced fear and survived." She looked at the faces around her. "Now, we must look forward. We will build a new Arden safe and strong, and we will send a message to the other colonies. We are ready to fight, to live, and to win." The people cheered softly, their hope rekindled. Days turned into weeks as the survivors worked harder than ever. They repaired the settlement, trained new fighters, and strengthened their defenses. The wild creatures became a part of their community, watching and protecting. Mira and Jor led scouting missions to find other survivors and gather resources. They sent messages through the stars, hoping to connect with other colonies who faced similar threats. One clear night, as Mira looked at the stars, a small light appeared in the sky. A ship was coming. The survivors gathered in silence, watching as the ship landed on the edge of the settlement. A figure stepped out, a woman dressed in simple armor, carrying a device that looked like the ones they used. "I am Commander Sella. From the colony of Vera," she said. "We received your message. We have fought the Deathworlders too. We have come to join you." Mira smiled, feeling a wave of relief and hope. The two colonies would stand together. The Deathworlders had brought destruction, but they had also brought unity together. The survivors of Arden and Vera began to build a new future. They shared knowledge, weapons, and courage. The wild creatures roamed freely, no longer just part of the forest, but part of the new community. Mira looked at the rising sun and whispered, "This is our home. This is our fight. This is our dawn." The stars above Arden shone bright with promise. The survivors had found hope where there was once only fear. They had become the guardians of their world. They had become heroes.